You're listening to One Free Family, a new take on peaceful parenting, where you can hear ideas for helping to raise free, independent, and peaceful children. Visit onefreefamily.com to connect and listen. Here are your hosts, James and Taylor Davis.
We are back with another episode of One Free Family. This is James.
And Taylor.
And today we're going to attempt to do a little bit of a mailbag. We have a bunch of questions that came through our One Free Family Facebook group that were really good, really engaging, but we weren't sure if they were quite meaty enough for us to make a whole episode out of them. But the first one that we're going to address might wind up being a whole episode. We're just not sure yet. So
just winging it
as
here.
As of right now, you'll know because you'll have seen the episode title, whether this was a mailbag or not. We're still living in the past, though. So congratulations to you for living in the future. And Taylor's giving me looks like she doesn't like my jokes.
The old intros are going well.
Someday I'm going to put you in charge of the intros, and then you can...
Put me in charge. I'm ready.
Oh, yeah? Do you just want to redo this intro?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. Called your bluff. How about that? Ex-poker player. So, yeah. So we're going to jump right into it.
Well, let's do a little housekeeping first. Yeah, just...
We have a housekeeping note?
Well, just always want to thank our patrons who continue to support the show.
That's true.
And
good people.
Remind you that if you would like to be a patron of the show, you can find us at...
onefreefamily.com/support. I'm terrible at the intros. And I think you also said you might have a complaint of the week, too, as far as I understand.
Yeah, my complaint of the week is that I pulled I don't know if it's my hip or my back or what it is, but it just started hurting 2 days ago, and it still really, really hurts. I couldn't even sleep on my side last night. So,
wow.
No, it really does hurt, and I can't pick the toddler up, and he's mad about it. So that's my complaint of the week. I feel like we should start balancing complaints of the week with gratitudes of the week because it sounds so complainy. Oh, no. Sure.
Well, my only complaint of the week is there's someone in our house right now who's feeling a little bit banged up physically, and it's been kind of hard for them. And I feel sad for that person, and I hope that they feel better soon. I don't want to out that person on the podcast, but... Well,
I think I've outed myself already.
Sorry, gratitude of the week?
Sure, gratitude of the week. I feel like why not balance it, right?
Sure.
Well, I have a lot of gratitudes all the time, but I would say that my gratitude right now is with school picking back up for kids who go and everything is just, at this time of year, I always feel really, really super grateful to just have my kids home with us and be able to spend more time with them. And this season we've picked up some more activities, or at least some of the kids have. So we've been a little bit busier, and even that level of busy, which is nothing compared to, I think, mainstream school-going folks, feels a little bit overwhelming at times, but it's all good stuff. But it just makes me grateful to have more slower time with our kids.
Right on. Yeah, I've been grateful for a lot of connection between our kids in particular. They've been spending a lot of time with each other and empathizing with one another when the others are struggling. And yeah,
True.
It's been a good few weeks for sure. So right on to the episode itself. Like I mentioned, we did have a few really good questions and good, I think, common areas of concern for parents. And yeah, let's see how far we get on them. So the first one, I think, is a universal one.
I think it comes up a lot, yeah.
For people that are raising their kids in tandem. And it's basically a question around how do you balance your relationship with your kids with your relationship as a couple. And the idea of basically how do you find mommy and daddy time when you've got these little people running around.
Or co-parent time, however you co-parent.
True. Good point. I've heard
keep it inclusive here.
That's extremely...
For real.
I know you're right, yeah. And... my lack of inclusivity is distracting me from proceeding. But yeah, basically the idea that you were in a relationship with this person before the kids came along. Mm-hmm. You had certain routines and things you looked forward to, and you've developed a real habit, a lot of momentum around being able to do certain things at certain times of day, whether it's having coffee in the morning or staying up late watching your favorite shows or filling the gaps anywhere in between. And now that becomes more difficult, and it inevitably becomes more difficult because, you're probably already working or doing something else throughout the day, and you were used to probably filling that time with the presence and company of this other person, and you could only interact with other people on your terms. You decided to go out to a big party with friends, awesome. If you wanted to take a weekend and binge watch Alias like we did 10 years ago.
That really dates us, I feel like.
It really does. Most people listening to this show
if you haven't watched that show, it's really awesome. So
it was really fun,
maybe go back and check it out. It might not stand the test of time.
Probably not.
Whatever.
Anyways, we enjoyed it at the time. But yeah, so those days are gone, right? And that can feel really hard. That's a really big transition for folks. And I think it's worth talking about.
Yeah.
So let's see how long it takes us. If we get through a whole episode worth of it, great. If not, then we have our backup questions.
Yeah. So I think first, what you just said made me realize that I do really want to recognize and acknowledge for people that really is a hard shift. And I understand that. And so just to show some empathy to you if you're feeling that, if your kids are younger and you're still kind of living that transition of life with just your partner and now life with this new person or these new-ish people that you know, that really need you because they're little and dependent. So I really do empathize with that. And it can feel like a really hard change in that way. It's actually something that I talk about a lot, again, with my clients as a birth and postpartum doula. When people are kind of preparing to welcome this baby into their life, I try to help people think about the big change that's going to bring to their relationship with each other and really help them think through how they can support each other through that change and how they can stay really as connected as possible, but also leave space for just kind of the fact that this is going to be hard and it's going to challenge us in new ways. And we're going to have to stay really open with one another and communicate about what's happening so that we can kind of work through these changes together. So yeah, it's hard. It's big.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, you know, this is just back to an expectations thing and how little our society actually prepares us for what it's going to be like when you have kids, because we are a very like polite society in a lot of ways where it's not seen as very strong to address like the things that come up in life. And for me, I felt totally blindsided by how demanding it would be to have kids. And you know, so we like had a dog first, right? And the dog introduced a certain amount of change in my life, having to wake up earlier. You know, I was working for myself, so I was waking up late in the morning. And I remember adjusting to it. But ultimately, a dog's a dog. It needs to be taken out a couple times a day. There are absolutely times where even a puppy will just like sleep and not give you any trouble. I also think you probably don't have the same like nervousness that you're going to screw your puppy up for his adulthood someday. It's like ultimately, if the dog isn't whining or going to the bathroom on the rug, I'm fine. With kids, it's this whole different set of emotions. It can trigger hormonal changes in us. And it's going to inevitably change anything. It's kind of silly. But I remember, aside from feeling concerns about not being able to spend as much time with you, also like my other hobbies and stuff, like all of a sudden all my other hobbies were kind of had to be put on the back burner. And that to me was hard too, because I'm someone who likes not only spending time with my loved ones, but also doing things that are fun for me.
Yeah, I totally think that there's a big piece of this, which is about adjusting our expectations and being able to live into this new life, maybe even with less expectations in general than we feel called to have. So I know we talk about that a lot. For me, expectations often set me up to just feel defeated or unsatisfied. And so when it comes to life with our partner that we've chosen and the person that we're parenting our children with most of the time, I think being able to have an expectation that this relationship is just going to look different now that we've added these children or this child to our family, and not to expect that everything is going to be able to stay the same or that we're going to have nearly as much time, just the two of us together, because it's just, and I think we all know this logically, it's just not super realistic for things to continue the same way that they've always been.
Yeah, I think the analogy you've used when we've had discussions like this in the past is thinking of things in terms of the seasons of our lives, our lives. And that was really useful to me because it's like, you know, there is that feeling when the first cold day comes in the fall where you're like, oh, it's not summer anymore, you know? Mm-hmm. And that can feel disappointing. It can feel like...
To some of us who love summer.
Yeah, we both love summer. And we're like, okay, the lake days are gone now. And, you know, going to the beach is going to be, maybe it means bringing a hoodie instead of an umbrella to stay out of the sun, right? And you're going to start to miss the things that you really like about those other seasons. Mm-hmm. But importantly, like seasons, I think... I mean, there's going to be different cool things about the different seasons that are coming up, new interesting things that you can look forward to, and trying to focus on them can be helpful. But if that feels like potentially a little dismissive, if it's something that's really, really important to you, like certainly time with your partner is more important than days at the beach, I would think. Mm-hmm. Understand that like seasons, it will come back too. That especially when your children are young and at their most demanding, that won't always be the case. Like your 14-year-old isn't going to come probably interrupt you at breakfast all the time, telling you about the things she's really excited about. You know?
She's likely to be happy to have some of her own space too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think at that point you might miss, like, remember when our little one would come in and I hate the old you're going to miss this someday because it feels dismissive, but like you actually might miss some of those things someday. And I think thinking of it in terms of the seasons, though, at least can help you have peace of mind that like not everything, and this is just a good analogy, I think, for most things parenting, that most things that you're dealing with in parenting are going to be temporary, and that there'll be a new crop of issues and difficulties that are probably going to seem even more important than this current crop. And, you know, if you can be mindful of that, then you won't sit around spend the whole fall worrying about not being able to go to the beach only to have winter come. Now you can't go outside at all.
Right.
Until you're in nice weather. You know what I mean? Like things are going to be in transition. You're going to be in a perpetual state of transition. So I think more useful is actually trying to prepare your own mindset for these transitions rather than trying to kind of shoehorn the lack of transitions into your life or trying to force the transitions to not happen as completely as they might be happening or something.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for like acknowledging the way that this change makes you feel when it comes to your relationship with your partner and giving yourself grace for how you feel about that. And then I think kind of leaning into that discomfort a little bit and figuring out what is realistic in terms of this season of our lives and the amount of time and the way we're going to spend time together and how we're going to balance that with our children's needs. So if you can sit with your partner and start to come to terms with, okay, this isn't going to look the same. We're grieving this change a little bit and that's okay. And now let's talk about what do we think we could carve out for ourselves that feels more realistic, right? So for some people that might be having a date night because they have really trusted people who can watch their kids. And then you do get that uninterrupted conversation without having to keep asking your kids to give you space to do that, right? You just get to go somewhere else and have that conversation. For other people, maybe you don't have that option. So it's a night or two a week that you carve out, like when the kids are asleep tonight, if your kids are younger and they go to bed earlier, we are not going to do work-related things or do our own thing. Like we're going to purposely intentionally choose to spend time together doing whatever it is we love to do together, watching TV, playing games, whatever it is, just talking. So for some people, maybe it will look that way. So I don't think we're saying completely abandon the idea of being able to carve out time and space for your relationship. I think what I'm saying is once you've adjusted those expectations a little bit, then sit with your partner and think about like, where can we grab some time that it's not going to put us in direct conflict with our children?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think especially the idea about trying to focus on having that intentional time together will allow you to still have a taste of those things that you really, really appreciate.
And know that it's coming again later in the week
right.
If you're feeling a little disconnected or like you're missing that time.
Yeah, and sometimes that also might require shifting things around in some other way too. Like maybe Friday, maybe you both work early in the mornings during the week. And weekends are really the only time, but weekends are hard because then you're tired from the week or whatever. Maybe you can trade sleep-in days on Saturday and Sunday, or, you know, you can try and be giving those gifts to one another of a little bit of peace and space. Because while in an ideal world, maybe you want to really connect with your partner, maybe really good adult connections with other people would be helpful to scratch some of that itch, right?
That's a really good point. And that's actually something that I think you have done for us a lot and modeled for me that feels like you are often a really big advocate of us helping each other get the time and space that we need to do the things that really fill our own cups. And that has been, I think, huge for me in terms of my own emotional well-being as a parent. And I think it's been meaningful for our relationship too. Like I feel really grateful and connected when that is done for me, if that makes sense, even if it doesn't always mean I'm spending time with you.
Spending that specific time.
Yeah.
And I think too, like another thing that's in the same vein of things that have been really helpful for us is, and I think in a second we'll get into, you know, managing conversations around our kids, because I think it is okay to have
a big one, yeah.
some boundary here. Like,
totally.
I don't think you have to say like, well, when I'm awake, my kid just has 24/7 access to me.
They can interrupt me any second. Exactly, I'm in the middle of anything.
Just come in the shower and demand a banana with peanut butter or whatever. Like, it's not.
I'm pretty sure that's not happened in our house.
I'm not sure either. But, you know, that is one of our kids' favorite snacks. And we have been interrupted in the shower before with requests like, hey, we can't figure out our password on the computer. And, you know, I'm just not going to come out of the shower right now. So why don't we shut the curtain? And I'll see you guys in about.
See you in 5.
See you in 10 minutes, yeah. So, yeah, that always makes me want to stretch the shower about 5 minutes longer as well. But yeah, so let's talk about what those boundaries might look like, right? Because I think like for a lot of people who hear about parenting approaches like ours, they wonder if we just basically let our kids, quote unquote, walk all over us.
If we kind of just forego our own needs in any way.
And I've been in situations where I've been hanging out with someone and kind of felt like, for instance, they were like happy to have their kids interrupt them constantly or kind of be in their physical space even when they didn't want to. And like they didn't feel like they wanted to advocate for themselves. Because I personally do feel like there is a delicate balance that's important to draw there. So, I mean, do you have any thoughts?
I have lots of thoughts. I think, so thinking about the frustration, I think many parents feel the frustration of maybe they're just trying to have a conversation with one another and their children are, you know, needing things from them in the middle of that conversation. So I think it's important to think about, for us to think about checking our expectations and understanding that children, especially small ones, just are going to need us, right? They're going to need us more often than they don't. And so if we're trying to have the really meaningful conversations with our partners when our kids are around, it's just going to be hard. Like, I think that's important to recognize. I also think it's important that we can create a level of boundary where if James and I are sitting at the breakfast table and nobody else has chosen to come sit with us, right? Our kids are always welcome at the table. If they are doing something else and so James and I are talking and one of them just walks in the room and just starts talking in the middle of our conversation, we do say, hey, did you hear? Like me and Daddy are talking right now. Can we just finish what we were talking about? And then we're happy to hear what you have to say. Right.
And I think, you know, you want to be consistent and understanding in those times.
Yeah.
Like,
be gentle.
You don't want to be
it.
angry with the kid for like, don't interrupt me again or something like that. But I think it's okay to say, hey, did you notice I was talking to mommy right now? And I was just in the middle of talking. So when you came in and you started talking, that stopped me from being able to speak to her. So I need to be able to finish this conversation because we're just focused on something that's really important to us. And as soon as we're done, I'd be happy to help you. And of course, you make exceptions if the kid is injured or,
of course,
you know, there's some huge
argument going on between your kids and you need to help them.
Right. You just need to attend to it. But I think consistently and lovingly communicating and pointing out that, you know, how oftentimes kids know what it's like to be interrupted, especially if they have siblings.
Yeah.
And just point out, you know, it's just like when you're trying to focus on something and Gus comes over and starts...
That's the toddler.
Starts moving your mouse pad around. Like, it's kind of like that. Like, we're just focusing on something right now. And I'll be happy to spend time with you in a minute and just let us finish up here.
And for us, what we've chosen and what feels right to us is when stuff like that happens, we still don't really request that the kids go away after that they go back into a different room. Like, if it's just kind of the middle of the day and everybody's awake and active in the house, whatever we're talking about at the time is okay for them to be around too. So if they come in and interrupt us and we ask for a minute, they can still stay there. They can hear the rest of our conversation. They can participate if it has something to do with them or they're interested. So I think for us, it's important that we're careful not to send them away, even if it's coming from a place of wanting to carve out space for our relationship and ourselves. I think for me, I don't really think that kids who are the age of my children can fully understand kind of what that means and what I'm trying to communicate when I'm communicating, like, me and Daddy want some space just for ourselves right now. I think for them, it's quite likely that they're going to hear that as, even though it's not meant to be, as kind of pushing them away. And it's going to be hard for them to understand. And if I know my kids, if they're feeling that and they're not understanding, they're going to push back and it's going to become a conflict.
Right. And this might mean managing or getting into a new rhythm with your partner around when you have certain conversations.
Right, exactly.
Because there are certain important conversations that you might not want to have in front of your kids, right? You know, if you're having financial troubles or you're talking about some aspect of your marriage that you just aren't inviting your kids' input on, right?
Absolutely.
And that's totally fine. It's just that there probably are times where your kids are like asleep, let's say, whether it's at nighttime or in the morning, that can be addressed. And it might mean exercising some patience around, like, I'd really like to get this sorted out right now. But unless it's like they're driving over to turn the gas bill off right now, we just have to address it. Then I think trying to be more intentional about when you're having certain kinds of conversations. Because if you're just discussing the news or, you know, you're just catching up about silly things that happened at work, like, I think it's okay if your kid is just kind of present and respectful of the fact that you're in the middle of a sentence.
Yeah, not speaking over you to start a new conversation or being reminded gently that when they do that, it feels hard and that you would prefer that they not.
Yeah, another big aspect of like feeling connected to you that was important to me, especially like when our kids are going through more difficult times, is that I think it's really, I think it's easy as a parent, if you really care about parenting your kids, to walk into a trap of only ever talking about parenting and housekeeping related things with your partner. And from a self-care perspective, like, your relationship with your partner is going to change, and that's understandable. And probably the reason you married the person you're married to is not because they're so awesome at discussing like housekeeping related tasks, even though you happen to be, and that they don't, and you weren't like constantly working through stressful kid related situations with them. Right. And so you're going to, in my experience, it's easy to feel disconnected from your partner if all you're ever talking about is like, Ollie's struggling with this thing right now. Is he struggling with that? And did we do the dishes? What about the laundry? Is tonight garbage night? Like, if all you're ever talking about are those things, then it's like, even if you are getting quote unquote time alone, then it's not going to feel.
It doesn't feel like rejuvenating or like it's filling the cup of your relationship, if you will. Yeah.
So one thing, like noticing that in our relationship, I asked like, hey, could we just have a certain time of day where we like address and talk about those things when they're struggling? Like, maybe it's when the kids are taking a little bit of time playing with their friends next door. Because I felt like at that specific time I'm recalling, like, I think our youngest was like a newborn basically. So, and
we could talk about that in front of him and it was fine. Yeah.
And our oldest kids were like old enough that they could occasionally be doing things on their own. Without interrupting us. And but it was important for me to say like for me personally, okay, after a whole day of parenting these kids and like working through problems, I'd like to be able to come down after putting the kids to bed and not go right back into, I'm so worried about the kids.
Let's take a break from that and enjoy some time separately. And that, not from each other, but from...
Right. And that could be time that we would look forward to spending together rather than like, just speaking from a place of honesty here, being like, it's already late. Do I really want to go down and just like talk more about concerns regarding the kids? And, and it wasn't anything personal or hoping to be offensive because I'm really rejuvenated by spending time with you, but like, doing the hard work of parenting is not always something I want to do at 10:30 at night or whatever. So.
I thought of another thing that we do that I think helps us be able to enjoy time together when we get it. And it sounds silly, but I think
pretzels and chocolate chips.
Pretzels and chocolate chips, the nighttime snack. No. And I think we could even do this more. We don't do it as much as we could, but and this was driven by you, is we try to use email to talk about like kind of housekeeping type things, especially dates and things on the calendar. So, we have a shared family calendar that we can both update. But if I have something coming up, like a work meeting or something that I want to go do or something for one of the kids, just sending it to James in an email. I can do it as soon as I think of it. So it gets it out of my brain. Because if you're anything like me, you know that when things are floating out in my brain, it makes me really overwhelmed. So I need to get them out and written down. And then he can just respond while he's checking his email whenever. And then we never have to use like our time together to talk about the more like mundane details of building our schedule and what that looks like. So
that's a great
I think that when you started encouraging me to do that, to just instead of talking to you about these dates, especially when you didn't want to like be looking at the calendar because we were trying to spend time together. And
you're like catching me as I'm going outside with the kids on the trampoline. You're like, hey, next Sunday. It's like, for me, and the way I keep track of things is I don't keep everything in my head in case you haven't noticed personally.
I have. So that's been a very simple kind of concrete thing that we do that I think is pretty helpful.
Yeah. And by the way, construction workers back at it again today. If you hear any banging, we apologize. It's just, it's a fact.
We're at our in-law or your parents' house and they're getting a little addition put on. So
this is where we go for quiet time, but the construction is hacking away at our ability to generate good sound. But so I think actually I wonder if we're transitioning into just a whole your relationship with your partner episode. And I think
we might be. Forget the intro, everyone.
Yeah. Now that you're back here in the future and we have arrived with you in the future, we're realizing that it's stretching out. Because I actually think that...
You got more to say?
I do. Yeah. Okay. Well, around that dates and figuring out how you and your partner best operate, that's like another thing that can make the time with your partner feel better and more meaningful. Because like for me, that what you're talking about is basically a productivity measure I took in my own life, realizing that I'm not very good at juggling dates in my head, realizing that when there are things I want to get done, I need to have them in a place that I'm frequently checking that I'm doing and that I'm checking at a point in the day that I can actually take action on it. So when it comes to managing dates or, putting a pin in like, oh, hey, should we think about basketball for Ollie this fall? Can you look into that? that's going to be the type of thing that if I can just have it somewhere in a list, then I can say, like the other day, like you're running out. Okay, I have a list of things I can just knock out real quick.
Yeah.
And we don't have to, and it was the same way with housekeeping tasks as well.
Like taking care of things that need to be done.
Little home improvement or DIY things.
Fixing, yeah.
Yeah. And mowing the lawn or fixing the washing machine if it gets plugged or, all the lovely things that come with managing a family and a household that, but they're just draining to discuss.
Right. And they're not often very necessary to discuss at length. Like a lot of these things. So I think that's what we try to do. And again, I think we could do even better at this. And mostly I could do better because I just want to talk about all these things for some reason.
Right.
Because again, when they're in my brain, I just feel like I have to get them out. So I talk. But I think things that don't require a lot of decision making or editorializing or opinions or discussion, if you can, we just put them in email and then we respond that way. It just is often much quicker and more efficient. And then it frees up our time in person together to be able to have more life-giving conversations.
Yeah. And I think also putting it in text helps to fast forward through all the relevant details that would need to be discussed otherwise. Like, are we doing anything next Sunday? Well, I don't know. We have that one thing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, what do we, I was thinking maybe I would go out and do this. And it's like, you wind up spending 5 minutes for something that could take 10 seconds. And again, where no connection is being built.
Right. And I think if you are listening to this and have this concern that this whole episode is about, like, that your time to have connected conversation with your partner is quite limited at this stage in your life, especially if you have younger kids. So being able to really capitalize on that time to use it in a more fulfilling way is totally worth it.
Right. And obviously, like, you really want to get on the same page as your partner and, recognize that every relationship is going to have different, different habits involved with it, different people, obviously. And like for me and you, I think we really like lists and having things written down so we don't lose track of things. And that helps alleviate a lot of stress. Maybe for other people, it wouldn't be that way. And that's okay too. But, I think we're back in the territory of just talking about what has worked for us.
Yeah.
And I think that has been really, really helpful.
I have one other thing that I was thinking about for this question. And again, it's an expectations thing, but it's a little bit of a shift. So I think a mindset shift that helped me at some point, and I don't really remember exactly when I had it, but a mindset shift that's been really helpful is to stop thinking or to try not to think about like my kids as a barrier to my relationship with my partner. So thinking about, I think James and I mean, we're 8 years into being parents now, but I think we've come to a point where actually part of the good stuff in our relationship actually comes from really appreciating our kids together. And obviously we have a lot of hard stuff and challenges with kids that happen, but I think we really connect over how much we appreciate and enjoy our children, and being able to kind of shift my mindset to the idea that like time with our kids around isn't taking time away from our relationship. Like our relationship actually has the opportunity to really grow in those times that we're all together as a family as well. So being able to like really appreciate the way that James jumps up and helps our kids with something when they need help so willingly is a way for me to feel like grateful for him and connected to him. Or when we all go out and do something together as a family and the stars align and it's like a really awesome, fun, perfect day. It doesn't always happen because it's hard to get 5 people on the same page, but that's a positive thing for our relationship too. And so I think being able to like appreciate what having a family together adds to our relationship instead of viewing the kids as a barrier to our relationship has been really meaningful for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think your partner and your family in general they're going to be the one safe person to obsess over your kids with. And that can be really fun.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, look how cute he is.
Does
right
anybody
now.
else think he's this cute?
And that's really fun. And I think, appreciating all those little nuances without feeling like you're bragging or, Yeah, because I think it's fun to appreciate your own offspring and marvel at their development and figure out where they're coming up with these certain ideas and giggle about the silly things that happen in life. For sure, I think a mindset shift can be important because if the expectation or the bar that you set for yourself is, how soon are we going to get back to the exact relationship we had?
Or like our relationship can only grow in our protected, private, alone times. Like that's going to be, that's just going to make, I think it's pretty unattainable in my opinion. And also, I think it kind of puts a wedge between you and your kids sometimes. Right. And if you're noticing, if you're starting to notice a lot of conflict with your kid over trying to get that time, that might be a sign that they just might not be ready in those moments to give you that time, and they're just not developmentally ready for it. So maybe being able to shift our own approach might just be really helpful.
You know what it reminds me of?
What?
When you went to Denmark and you talked about, was it hygge? Was that the idea? Like the cozy.
Oh yeah, and hygge has totally had a moment these past few winters in our culture too. Everyone's grabbing onto that.
That idea. So can you explain what hygge is? And I'll bring it back to how it relates to having kids.
Yeah, I mean, if you interact with social media and the internet, you've probably seen articles being shared and stuff about hygge, which is
they've even used that word. I'm not on
the
internet that much. Okay.
Yeah, I know. You don't do much social media, but it's hygge, but it's a Scandinavian, basically it's just a concept, and that's the word used to describe it. And it's a concept, I don't really know where you're going with this, so I'm just going to describe the concept.
In the context of winter.
Yeah, so I studied abroad in Denmark in college, and Scandinavia is really dark for a really long time in the winter. And so the Scandinavian people in all these different countries there have this concept of hygge, and the idea is like comfort and coziness and appreciating the dark season. And so can manifest in inviting people into your home quite often to enjoy food and warm drinks together and enjoying the feeling of togetherness because you're kind of stuck inside in the dark, but making the best of it and lighting candles and having soft lights in your house and really kind of like capitalizing on this time to create this feeling of comfort and warmth and togetherness and coziness.
So how does this relate to parenting? You might be wondering. I guess I'm back on the seasons analogy again. I think, I remember when we lived in a ski town, and when winter would approach, everyone was so excited for winter. When's it going to snow?
Right.
And then I remember moving back east and not living in ski towns, and it's literally just all people would talk about how much they were dreading the cold seasons that would come up. And just observing that complaining about the season that you're in, whether it's the season of life or the season of the actual physical seasons outside, doesn't make them go by faster. It doesn't make them not happen. It doesn't change how much snow you're going to get or whatever. You can do things to kind of cheat the seasons. If you live in a place with seasons, you can go to Hawaii for a week over your winter break or whatever. But ultimately, you're going to be back in the same season when you return. And if you've elected to live in a place with seasons or elected to have kids, this is just what you've signed up for at that point, right? And I loved that Scandinavian idea of hey, this is just life. We're not going to sit around complaining about winter all winter.
Let's make the very best of it.
And I think it's the same thing when it comes to kids, because there's going to be things that you're going to appreciate and there's going to be things that are going to be challenging. And so much of how that winds up getting interpreted is going to come down to your interpretation, your approach to it.
Yeah. And your response to it. And
yeah, exactly. And, unlike winter, you can be as mad at winter as you want. Winter is going to be fine someday, and you don't care about how winter is going to turn out. You do care about how your kids are going to turn out, and your attitude and approach to how you interact with your kids around perhaps the unexpected ways that they've changed your life is going to have a big time influence on your relationship with them. And so I think transitioning into talking about, okay, so what can we do to kind of support our kids in understanding that sometimes we're going to want to finish our conversations, or maybe that we do like to carve out a little bit of time to have our coffee and chat in the morning. Especially, I know for a lot of families, say one of you works in a late night hours job, right? Connecting at that time in the morning might be your only time.
Right.
If your partner works until midnight and you wake up earlier to get the kids shuffled off or whatever. And so I'd like to talk briefly, at least, about how we can best equip our kids to manage that successfully while still feeling loved and attended to.
Right. So kind of saying you don't have to totally give up on any time with your partner. You can try to preserve a little bit of that, but maybe how can we think outside of the box to do that?
Yeah. So for us, it's been a few hours on Monday morning, which we spend trying to podcast about parenting.
And then we hang out after. Yeah.
For a quick cup of tea and a bagel. And then oftentimes at night, even though our kids stay up later than a lot of kids do that are our kids' age, we still often do try to find time together then. But let's say that realistically, you and your partner work a staggered work schedule. The only time you really can connect is during the day. How can we set ourselves up for success in trying to find pockets of time together during the days?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's always space for thinking creatively and thinking outside of the box. So if that feels like something you want to continue to try to protect, I think it might be a good place to start to just think about what are some of your kids' absolute favorite things to do, and how can you maybe facilitate that so that you can try to have some time with your partner. So whether your kids have a very favorite show that they watch, or maybe there's kind of like an art material that doesn't come out very often, but your kids really, really love it. So you let them go to town with that.
Put the paints in one room, you and your partner go in the other.
Yeah, just use tempera paint. You can clean it up later.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I think it's worth thinking about like how to give our kids something that will keep them occupied if possible, so that we can still try to do our thing. And I think I have to say that again with the caveat of like, your kid, you may try this and it's worth continuing to try new things. And if you keep bumping up against conflict, like they just might not be ready still.
Well, so are you telling me I should let my TV be the babysitter for the kids?
I think I might be.
Well, so, and I guess, I'm obviously speaking a little bit tongue in cheek if you've listened to this episode before, but I think one of the other things I observe parents walking into, and only because I've been there and you've been there, and I think many people have been there, is you want it both ways. You want both.
I'm guilty of that still all the time.
And so like wanting it both ways means like, I want time with my significant other or I want to go out to eat with the family at a nice restaurant, or I want this certain thing that's really, really important to me. And I also want my kids to behave exactly the way I want them to in the same moment without me giving anything to help that. Right. So that might look like, I want time with my partner to talk about anything we want to talk about for an hour a day. Mm-hmm. And during that time, I want my kid to play creatively with their blocks. To be really
self-directed and leave us alone. And
play imaginary games with their little sister quietly in the attic. Like, you might not be able to get it both ways.
Yeah.
You might need to recognize that it's just okay. If something is so important to you, it's okay to say, like, during that time, I'm going to actually totally, like, that can be good practice, actually, if you're thinking about trying to let go of more expectations with your kids.
Like, what if you, like, put on their very favorite show for them and gave them like a whole tray of really awesome, exciting snacks and just like let them go for it.
Yeah. And then you take that time and you reward yourself.
And you really enjoy that time with your partner.
Yeah. And you don't sit there worrying. Because, one thing I've seen too, especially people that are transitioning to unschooling or, maybe have second thoughts about helping their kids to be self-directed, is their kids are taking time to be self-directed, but they're doing something that isn't one of the societally pat yourself on the back things like learning an instrument or going on a hike or whatever. And then they spend that time, instead of like really relishing that time to enjoy something that they really like, they spend it worrying that their kid is watching YouTube or something.
Right. Because I just think about like, what if you could create a little time each day for your kid that they looked forward to so much because it was so special and fun. Right. And at that same time, you got to have your time with your partner. Exactly. Again, it's not going to work for everybody. Like we couldn't do that for our toddler because he won't sit for that long and watch. There's nothing that he wants
to do for an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and again, I would say if you're hoping for an hour, that might be a good place to check in on your expectations, especially if your kids are really young. But I think it's worth a try. Like what would really, really speak to your kid in terms of something that they would get excited about each day. Mm-hmm. And so they would feel like really seen and heard and taken care of because you're kind of like feeding this interest or this thing that they love. And you would also have a little bit of time with your partner. So I think that there's kind of ways that we can do it that actually can be relationship building between everybody and not create this point of tension every day. Because I can't imagine that it's enjoyable to be trying to have time with our partner and also at the same time feeling this tension between yourselves and your kids.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, it's tricky. I think human beings, we're sort of wired to feel like worrying about something is doing something too. Mm. And like, if our kids are doing something that they really enjoy, but that we are like a little bit unsure about, it can be easy to take that time to go grab your partner and be like, should our son really be watching these YouTube things? And if you want to talk about that, you should talk about it. Mm-hmm. But like, again, try to find time. I would say if you just make a decision in your house where you're like, sometimes our kids can watch 2 hours of YouTube a day and then that's fine. Like we're okay with that. Yeah. Don't take that 2 hours. Take that 2 hours and do something for yourself during that time. And that might show you a little bit more concretely how that's benefiting the whole family. Like they're doing what they want. Whoa, I'm doing what I want too.
I'm filling my own cup.
Yeah, everyone is feeling happy now versus like developing that own association for yourself that when the kids are doing the thing that they want, I'm going to spend time worrying about it.
I have not ever done that before, and I just feel like you're looking directly into my...
I'm looking directly at you because I love you, and we're doing this podcast together. and I like to make eye
Moment
contact
of connection.
with people. We're taking a little moment of connection. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, secret goal for this podcast is to have conversations that are about us, but not really about us, and that's okay too. But yeah, I don't know. I think we've done 40 solid.
Yeah, we probably should just forget the grab bag idea and
I think we did 20 minutes ago.
Grab bag it next time.
Yeah, we'll be grabbing bags in the future. How about this? If you want to submit anything that you want to grab out of our bag for next week's podcast,
Ooh.
we definitely have 2 things, and we'll tease them right now.
Okay.
Just so you're out there. The idea of when bad influences, as far as we're concerned, come into our kids' lives.
How to handle
and then
that.
Another one had a question about how we handle Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny and
cool.
Kind of these fairy tale type characters.
But yeah, if you have more things, you can come join our group. It's just One Free Family on Facebook, and you can post them there. Or if you don't want a whole group conversation about it, or if Facebook isn't your thing because it's not for everybody, you can also just email us at jamesandtaylor@onefreefamily.com and share a question there, and we can anonymously or not anonymously, based on your preference, add it to our list of things to talk about.
Right on. Yeah, and I want to say, too, thank you so much to everyone who's been continuing to talk in the One Free Family group. We had a hectic couple of weeks with a business-related thing for me and my parents being out of town and us not being able to take this carved-out time to focus on the show and the listeners, and I apologize about that. But we see you out there, and we are reading, and we are excited about talking about all the things that are important to you.
Yeah, so thanks so much for your enthusiasm and support, and thanks for listening and joining us on this journey. And as I always say, remember that each moment is a new chance to be the parent that you hope to be.
Love you guys. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to One Free Family. If you enjoy the podcast, please show your support by becoming a patron at onefreefamily.com/support. Your support will help make this show better. Plus, you can get access to rewards and additional episodes by joining. Again, that's onefreefamily.com/support. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.